Hi everyone, it's Michael again. So today I'm going to do a walkthrough on developing REST API with Amazon API Gateway. So lab overview and objective. In this lab, you will create a REST application programming interface API by using Amazon API Gateway. After completing this lab, you should be able to create simple mock endpoints for REST APIs and use them for your website. Enable cross-origins resource sharing cause the scenario in the previous lab, you took on the role of Sophia to build a web application for the cafe. As part of this process, you created an Amazon Dynamic DB table that was named Food Products, where you store information about cafe menu items. You then loaded data that was formatted in JavaScript object notation JSON into the database table. The table structure looks similar to the following table. One line item of table data is as an example, we have the product name, description, price and cent, product ID, tax and special. So in the previous lab, you also configured code that used the AWS SDK for Python Model 3 to scan a DynamoDB table to retrieve product details, return a single item by product name using getItem as a proof of concept, create a global secondary index GSI called special GSI that you could use to filter out menu items that are on offer and not out of stock. In this lab, you will continue to play the role of Sophia. You will use Amazon API Gateway to configure mock data endpoints. There are three that you can create. So get product which will eventually invoke a DynamoDB table scan. Get product on offer, which will eventually invoke a DynamoDB index scan and filter. Post create report, which will eventually trigger a batch process that will send out a report. Then in the lab that follows this one, you will replace the mock endpoints with real endpoints so that the web application can connect to the DynamoDB backend. When you start the lab, the following resources are pre-created for you in the account. And at the end, the following architecture should be what we have. Okay. So first task, prepare the development environment. So in the first task, you will configure your AWS Cloud9 environment so that you can create the REST API. So from the AWS Management Console, we go into choose Cloud9, and then from there we go to the instance and go into the Cloud IDE. And then what we're going to do is we go to run this command right here inside the terminal. And so we noticed that a code.zip file was downloaded to the AWS Cloud9 instance, and the file is listed in the environment window in here. So we need to extract the file by running the unzip code. Now it is unzipped. So now what we can do is we're going to run the script that upgrade the versions of Python and AWS CLI installed in your IDE environment, and also creates the cafe website in your AWS account. Okay, so we run the command and it's waiting for it to run and download. The script will prompt you for the IP address, which your computer is known to the internet. So we're going to use this to discover this address and then paste the IPv4 address into the command prompt and finish the running script. So we're going to copy this IP4 address right here, and then we're going to paste it in here, run it. And next, what we are going to do is we're going to verify the versions of the AWS CLI install. So in the AWS Cloud9 bash terminal, we're going to run the following command. to check the version. Okay. So next, the output should indicate that the version 2 is installed right here. To verify the SDK for Python is installed, we're going to run the following code right here. Okay. If you see a message about not using the latest version of pip, ignore the message. Now, when we are going to verify that the cafe website can be loaded in the web tab. So load the websites in the browser. So we go to the browser tab and open the S3 console, right? So I'm going to open a new tab and go to S3. And then after that, I'm going to click into this instance, this bucket, S3 bucket in here. And then in the S3 bucket, we're going inside the object, and then if the files that the script just uploaded not displayed, choose the refresh icon. Then now we're going to choose the index.html, and then inside here we're going to copy the object URL right here, and then we're going to paste it in the browser to see if this load. So here's our cafe website. It is loading. As we can see, you can view everything here. It's very good. Note that particular website details. So notice in the browser pass-through section there are two buttons: an offer view display by default. So in 6 menu items and select view or view, notice that many more menu items display optionally exposed to developer console view in the browser. For example, with Firefox, we can go to developer and we're going to use web console. So tool, and then go to web developer or web browser tool, and then go to web develop tool. Use the web console or browser console right here. Awesome. Okay, so here's the analysis. These menu details that display on the website are currently being read out of our product on offer.json and our product.json files that are hosted in your S3 bucket. You also have a copy of these same files in your Cloud9 IDE in the resources website directory. If you are looking at the browser developer console's view details, you will also see a log entry written by the main.js file, indicating that hard-coded data is being used. Later in the lab, you will see that the number of menu items that display changes and that the messages in the console change as well. Leave the website open in this browser tab. You will return to it toward the end of the lab. Okay, so for task 2, we are going to creating the first API endpoint to get. In this task, you will create a REST API called the product API. You will also create the first of the 3 resources of the API. The first API resource will be called product. It will make a GET request so that the website can retrieve all rows from the food product DynamoDB database table. You will then deploy it in an API gateway stage that's named prod. When a user visits a website, it will make an AJAX request and return a list of cafe menu items from the API gateway. It will return mock data for now. So to complete all these tasks, you will use the SDK for Python. So in the AWS Cloud9 navigation pane, we're going to expand the Python 3 directory. So go back here, go to Python 3 directory, expand it, and then we go to open the 5 name create products API. Create product API right here. Open it. Okay. So this is in Python. Next, on line 3, replace the fill me in with the correct value that will create an API gateway client. Okay, so on line 3, what's line 3? Right here. What do we need to replace it? Fill, replace the fill me in with the correct value that we create the API gateway. Tip: consult the SDK for Python documentation as needed. Okay, so line 3, what is it? Client model 3 dot client. So we just put API gateway in here as example right here, right? Yep. I'll replace this with API gateway. Okay. Now we'll just save it. Go back. Take a moment to analyze the first part of what this code will do when you run it. So on line 5 to 24, we create a REST API that name products API and a resource that name product. So 5 to 24, 5 right here to 24. So 5, we have the client, create REST API, name product API. We have description, the minimum compression size, and there is endpoint configuration. Then let's see. After that, we have step ID, resources, the root ID, right? And the products, we have created resources here. Okay. On line 28 to 33 is create a method request of type get in the product resource. You will analyze what additional lines of code accomplish later in this task. So 28 to 33 right here, we have a method put method. HTTP method is get. Okay. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to run the code. So first of all, we're going to save it. So we just save it again to make sure, and then we're going to run these into the terminal. So change directory to Python 3, and then we're going to run the Python 5 name create products API. Run it. It's done. So return to AWS Management Console browser tab, and we are going to open the API Gateway console. Alright, go back. What I want to do is go in here, open a new tab. Inside a new tab, I'm going to go to API Gateway. Then we're going to open a product API that you just created by choosing the link. So right here, product API, go into a product API. Then we're going to choose the get method that we defined right here. And then after that, we're going to see the details of the get method execution in the graphical method right here. So here is the graphical method. What it shows is here is a client, and if we have the request method, then it's going to get into have migration request. We go to our mock integrations, and then it have integration response, and the method responds back to the client here in our graph. So after we see our graph, next we're going to let's see if I click it in here. Okay, yeah, maybe my browser is so small it didn't show everything, but when I click in here it shows all the details. So next step is going to take a moment to study the data flow in the get method that you define. So the tip is, if you have a screen that is large enough, and arrange the browser tab so that you have the AWS Cloud 9 IDE open next to this browser tab. This way you can see the code and what is produced side by side. So on the left is the client. So on line 28 to 33, When you run the test, the method request is sent to the URL in the Amazon resource name ARN details. The request doesn't require any authorization to invoke it. Line 50 to 58. So back here to line 50 to 58. Right here, 50 to 58. Look like we have integration, park integrations, put integrations is a get method. Okay, and then let's see what is due. The integration request of the mock is invoked and the mock endpoint receives the data for line 35 to 48. So here in line 35 to 48, which we have the put method response. So here the mock endpoint invoked the integration response, which invoked the method response on line 61 to 91. 61 right here to 91. So what this does is it is a put integration response is a get method, and here we have the response template right here. That's this is our template. Now go back. So the method response return the REST API response back to the client that request originated from. So here's the analysis. To make it easier during this initial API development phase, you will use the mock data. When you test the API call, it will not actually connect to the database. Instead, it will return the data that's hard coded in the response template part of the code line 67 to 91. This approach reduces the scope of potential errors during testing. You can stay focused on this lab on ensuring that the REST API logic is well defined. However, the structure of this mock data intentionally matches the data structure that will appear in the next lab when Lambda will be interacting with the database table. The key value will be mapped to the attributes that are defined in the DynamoDB table, which you created in previous lab. Note that attributes in DynamoDB are not primitives. Instead, they are wrapper objects as shown in the example code below. This is why there is a slight difference between the key names in the JSONs and the attribute names in DynamoDB. So we're going to have the product name. The product name is as vanilla cupcake. So in the API gateway console, we're going to test link, then scroll to the bottom and choose test button. Right, let's see. So in the API gateway console, let's see, API gateway console in here. What we need to do, we're going to choose test link, then scroll to the bottom to choose test button. Where is the test link? API gateway, what is this called? Test link. Choose the test link in the API gateway console. Here we have inside the API gateway console. Is there any test link or something like that in here? Let's see. Go back. VPC link. Not that one. So go to API. Go to product API. Is there any test import? No. Interesting. Where is it? Oh, tests right here. So we want to click tests, I believe. Yep, choose a test button. We want to choose it. So here is our test, and this is what we get back. This is the get method test result. In here we have the request product and latency. Now go back. So in the panel on the right, you should see the following: response body, response header, and log information. Something similar like that. Yes, the spawn body right here. This is the header, and this is the log. Awesome. So congratulations, you have now successfully created and tested a REST API with a resource that makes a GET request. Now task 3 is we are going to creating a second API endpoint get. In this task you will define another API endpoint of type get. This endpoint will eventually support a call to the product on offer from the cafe website, and it will return in a stock item. So in the AWS Cloud9 navigation pane, so we go back in here. So inside the Python directory, we go to open the file name create on offer API, create on offer API right here. So in here we are going to replace the fm1 and fm2 with the correct values that this code file will add another resource to the API you define in the previous task. So let's see, in the browser tab we go into yeah, we need to change these two right here, app API ID and parent ID. In order to do that, we first need to go to the API gateway console and choose product API that we just created. Go to API, this is product API, awesome. And then what we're going to do is that you want to create a moment ago. So on the panel on the left, we're going to choose resources. So panel on the left, we're going to choose resources, which is this one right here. Yep. And then we're going to choose the get under product right here, get under product. And in the breadcrumb navigation at the top of the screen above the action menu, you can see the API products API followed by an ID in parentheses. This is the API ID. So let's see, where is it? Is it at the top, right? So it's say like API product API on the breadcrumb. Where is it? API, wait, API products API navigation on top of the screen above the action menu. Where the action menu? Above the action menu. There is a resource API right here. Does that mean that API ID? Okay, I don't see that. Oh, I see it now. It's just right here. So this is our ID right here. So resource and the product API. This is our ID. So for API ID, I want to replace that API ID here. That's our API ID. Okay. Go back here. The next instructions is on the same line you see / products followed by another ID in parentheses. This is the resource parent ID. API product API. Wait, API. Oh, is it? Say API product API parent ID. Make sure I get the correct one. Is there any other way to check it? Doesn't show it. Okay. This product. This is resource ID. Is that resource ID? Let's go to product API. Right here is the product API followed by an ID. So that's correct. Product API followed by an ID. But where does it say on the same line / product? We have parent ID. Okay. So I believe that is this resource one is a parent ID. So I want to copy this parent ID, resource ID, into here. Okay. Let's say right here on the same line, you see the forward slash products followed by another ID in parentheses, which is doesn't show here. There's no other line right here. However, this is product right here. It's say get products, right? There's another ID right here. Let's see if I go just choose the product only. Yep, path products resource is this one. Is it right? Is it on the same line? I don't see any other line right here. So the other ID that I get is from this one right here. There's only two ID, this one and the other one. This is ARN, this is different. So just keep it like this. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna try maybe choose this ID right here. So go back. So observe the rest of the code. The code look very similar to the create product API code because it is also creating a get resource with a mock data endpoints. Notice that the hard-coded data response is formatted as is following. It returns a single menu item, which will be sufficient since this is a mock data. So we have an array. In JavaScript, it's called an array of objects, or in Python, it's called a list of dictionary. Okay. So we have the name, ID, description, and the tag array. Okay, special int. Now we're going to create the API resource. So what we're going to do is we're going to save change to the file. Yep, right. We're going to save change to the file. And then after we save it, what we're going to do is we're going to run this command right here to confirm and run the create on offer API. It is done. So what we need is we're going to observe the results. So now we are going to return the AWS management browser and open the API gateway console again. We're going to choose the API link in the breadcrumb navigation on the left and open the product API by choosing the link. Now notice that there is now a nested resource called on offer under products resource. Let's see. Refresh. Let me refresh this page. Yes, so under product we have a nested on offer under the products resource. Now we go to test the on offer resource. So we're going to use the test link the same way you tested the resource in the previous task. So I'm going to go back, click it, and test it. Let's see this one. Oh, go to API, go to product. I'm gonna test it. There's no test button. How did I test this earlier? Oh, right here, the test button right here. Now run the test, and here we receive our response body, response header, and also the log as well. Okay, so look like it's working well right here. So you should receive a 200 HTML status code response. Okay, 200. All right, status response code is 200, which is what we need. Awesome, and it have everything similar like this here. Just response header. This is the product item array, name array. Yep, Apple slice. Yep, pretty good. So congratulations, you have now have two API resources the website will be able to use. So task 4 is creating the third API endpoint post, In this task, you will create a third resource for the API, create a report. This resource will be configured at the same level as products, not as a nested resource under products. So the cafe staff who are logged in authenticated with will later use this API resource to request an inventory report. The report details will be discussed in later tabs. However, for now, you will configure the API to support this feature. You will also test that the website can make an asynchronous JavaScript and XML AJAX request. It is fully expected that the AJAX request will fail when you test it because you haven't configured an authentication mechanisms yet. However, you will configure authentication in later lab. So in the AWS Cloud9 IDE, if the create products API that py5 is not already open it. You can run this file in task 2. Create product API. Create product API right here. Okay. So next, in the Python 3 directory, open the create report API. Create report API. Right here, create report API. Awesome. So in the main code editor window, we're going to right click the create report API 5 tab and then choose split pane into two column. Create report API, split intermediate, right, split pane into two column. Okay, very good. Now analyze and update the create report API code. Create report API. Be sure to compare the code in this file to the create product API. Create product API. Why you do the analysis and update. So replace the FM1 that appear on line 5 with the correct value. F1 right here. Replace with the correct value. So I believe API gateway client. So similar to the other one, it should be API gateway as well. API gateway, like right here. Yep. And then after that, appear on line 5. Yes, line 5. So the tip is you could use the console as you did before to discover the API ID. However, you can also use the AWS command line interface AWS CLI to find the value of the API ID by running the following command. So right here, we're going to run this command right here. Okay. And then we're going to, so you should use the console. However, you can use the command right here to find the API ID. So this is our API ID right here. So we're going to analyze the rest of the create report API code while comparing it to the create product API code. So the code in the two files looks similar, but they have some differences. So the HTTP method that's invoked is post instead of get. This code creates a new resource with a path part of create a report instead of product. So the product integration response define the three response parameters. In create report API, these parameters do not allow a cross-origin resource sharing calls, whereas in create products API they do allow it. So the product integration response also codes a response for the testing purposes. Although the user is not authenticated, the purpose of the test is to ensure that the client can receive response. So what we're going to do is we're going to save the files, then we run the code. So file, I want to save it, and then in the next step you will run this code right here. So in the terminal, going to confirm that in the py3 directory, yes it is. Then return the code to create the third endpoint. So we're going to create run the create report API, and let's see. Invalid API identifier, API gateway. Interesting. Let's see what I need to do. Okay. So I have the API ID here. Does that mean I go to? Oh yes, this is API ID that I need to use. So have to run the code again. Oh, I need to save it first, then run it again. Save it, run it, done. Awesome. So that's fixed it. So in the API gateway console, via the details of the report API that you configure, we're going to run to the API gateway console tab and refresh the page. All right. So go back to the API gateway right here. We're going to refresh it, and then as we can see, there's a post request right here, create report. So what you need to do is confirm that you are in the product API. Yes, we are. And then in the pen, we confirm the resource is selected and choose create post, report to post. We want to choose post. Awesome. And then you should see the detail in the post method executions. So this is our detail of the post method executions. Okay. Awesome. So let's see what we need to do next. So next we're going to choose test link and then choose test button at the bottom of the screen. So go to test and test it out, and it's working. So we have the status 200, response body, response header, and log. So this is what we have right here. Awesome. So task 5, we are go into deploying the API. Now that you have defined all 3 resources in the API, the next step is to deploy the API. So deploy the API still in the API gateway console, where you have the product's API details open. Under resources, select root. Okay, so still in the API gateway console, where you have the product API detail open, right? Product APIs, where is it? Open, and we're going to choose resources. Okay, and then from action menu, choose deploy API. Action menu, right here, we'll deploy API. So I'm going to choose deploy API. What is going to be our stage? So deploying stage is going to be new stage, right? New stage right here, and then for stage name, we're going to call it prod. And then for the stage description, we just leave it blank. Deployment description, give it blank as well. Okay. And then we're going to choose deploy it. Awesome. So we successfully created deployments for the product API. This deployment is active for prod. So here's the tip: if you see a warning that you do not have the list web ACL and associates web ACL permission for the web application firewall, you can ignore the message and close it. And so now we're going to choose invoke URL value. Invoke URL value right here. And then we're going to use it next. So step 6, updating the website to use the API. So in this final task in the lab, you will update and then test the website's files that are hosted on the Amazon S3. After you completing these updates, the website will invoke the REST API that you just created. Okay, so here is the next step. So in the Cloud9 IDE, we are going to open resource website config. Resource, you go to website, so go to config.js. Inside config.js, on line 9, replace no with the invoke URL value you copied a moment ago. Be sure to surround it in code. Okay. Line 2 API URL. So change to code. Paste it in here. Awesome. I'm going to save it. Then verify that prod appear at the end of the URL with no trailing slash. Let's see. Yep, no trailing slash here. Okay. And then we save the files. Next, we go to update and then run the update config.py script just to make sure save again. Okay. So we go to open Python 3. Inside Python 3 right here. Let me minimize that, maximize this in Python 3. I'm going to go update config.py, update config.py right here. And let's see what I need to do here. Replace FMI placeholder with the name of your bucket. You can find the bucket name in S3 console by just running this command AWS S3 ls. So this is the name of my bucket. So I believe it is the entire things is the name of the bucket. Okay. So I'm going to save it. Notice that this script upload the config.js file that you just added in the previous step, and we're going to upload it to the S3 bucket. So we're going to save change to the file and run the following script right here. Save again, run. It's done. So we're going to load the latest Cafe web page with the developer console view exposed. If you still have the Cafe website open in the browser, return to it. If you do not still have it open, we're going to reopen it now by following this step right here. I believe we still have it open, which is right here. Let me refresh it. Yep, and I can go to tool, go to browser tool, go to developer tool, and we have things open right here. Awesome. Um, so if you have not already done so, expose the developer right here. Go to view JavaScript console. But this one we want to use the web console. So go to tool, a browser, a developer tool, or like maybe browser console, right here. Maybe this is not what we need. Go to browser tool, web developer tool. We go to JavaScript console. Let's look for JavaScript. Where is it? Is it right this one? The CSS. Where JavaScript application maybe? Nope. Inspector. We have HTML, styling. This one is laid out. Compute. Change capacity, font animation, application storage. Where is the JavaScript? Inside console? I believe this is a console, inside the console. CSS. Okay, yeah, so we're inside the web console. That's what we need. So now refresh the web browser tab to load the changes. Let's load it. Let's see. Awesome. This is a cross origin request block. The cafe website should display if you have issues loading the website, verify that you are still connected to the internet with the same API address that is hard coded into the bucket policies. So the name of this task is using the website API update. So test and observe detail about the website application logic. So scroll to the top of the page and choose login and stuff. Choose login, no API to call. Okay. So you're going to receive the message of no API to call. This is expected. The authentication logic will be implemented in a later lab. The generate report call from the website will also be implemented in a later lab. So from the web page that will load after a successful login. So we're going to scroll down to the browse pastries sections. Okay. Notice that on offer is chosen by default. Okay. Recall that at the beginning of this lab you saw 6 products listing here. However, you should see only one product listing. That is because the website is now displaying the mark data that you set in the product on offer resource you configure in task 3. So now we're going to choose view all. This is everything now. You should now see 3 products listed. This match the mock data you set in the products resource you configure in task 2. So observe the log message printed to the developer console in your browser tab. So the main.js file has logged that you are now using the API gateway to get either a mock or real data. So note that you may also see a message in the developer console that a request to a bin products has been blocked by course policies. You can ignore this by now since this is functionality that is introduced in later labs. So return to the Cloud9 IDE and open the resources website script main.js file details in the text editor. Recall that at the start of this let's see what it say again. Actually we need to observe the log message printed in the developer console in the browser tab. Okay, and the main.js file has logged that you are now in the API gateway. Okay, yep, that's what we have. So return to this and go to the main.js, which is resources website script to main.js. Resources website Go to main.js. Resources, website script. Then go to main.js. This is our JavaScript file, main.js. Okay. So recall that at the start of this lab, you set the API, this API right here, values here in the config.js file to match the invoke URL value that was generated when you deploy the API. So here in the main.js application code, you can observe how the Cafe application logic notices that you are now using API gateway to retrieve menu data. So now when the Cafe application loads menu data, it calls the invoke URL of the deploy API to retrieve it. So congratulations, your website is now making call to the API that you created and deploy. So here is the update from the Cafe that Sophia is satisfied that she has made progress. After she successfully set up the website on the Amazon S3, Sophia has been excited to improve the website's functionality. Her larger plan is to build a serverless dynamic website with a database backend. Sophia plan has three major milestones. So the first milestone was to create a database backend to store Cafe data. She's accomplished that in the previous lab by using DynamoDB. The second milestone is to create a REST API so that the websites that are hosted on the Amazon S3 can interact with the backend database. Sophia just completed the most difficult part of that task during this lab. So following the diagram summarizes the features that Sophia has built in the last lab and in this one. So here's our diagram. So we have three different API right here to connect to mock endpoints. Here our website. Here's our S3 bucket. Here is a DynamoDB that stores the food products table. So though the API currently use mock data, it should be straightforward to replace the mock endpoints with the actual endpoints that can communicate with the database. So the third milestones will be accomplished in the next lab. Sophia will create the AWS Lambda functions. The REST API resources that she created in this lab will trigger those Lambda functions to query the DynamoDB table. This database table contains the actual data that she stored in the previous lab. Okay. So finally, in the later lab in the course, Sophia will use the Amazon Cognito to implement the authentication logic that the create report API call expects. Sophia knows that she has work to do. For now, though, Sophia decides to celebrate her most recent accomplishment by relaxing with her friends. Awesome. So that is it for this lab walkthrough. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye bye.